I think that we should stop Muslim migrants from raping people, and I think we should stop them from attacking Jews, which statistically is a real problem. Oh, that makes me a Nazi? Okay, fine. Let's go to this here. This is the theme today. All cultures are not equal. Okay?
True.
Western culture is better. The fact that you're watching this using electricity on the internet or a television is exhibit A. All right? You enjoy so many luxuries that we take for granted. And many people here don't realize how folks live in other countries. Okay, that's an ingratitude issue. You also don't realize that not all cultures share the same values. People don't, there are more slaves right now on Earth than ever. We've talked about over 40 million, right? How does that happen? You're in an air-conditioned or centrally heated house right now watching this on a relatively free and open internet, maybe on a smart device, working from home perhaps. How can there be more slavery than ever? Because some cultures still engage in cannibalism, some child sacrifice, some just child rape, like many Islamic cultures. Some don't believe in freedom. We don't share the same values. One of the most corrosive things to have ever happened in pop culture is everyone holding hands and we are the world. We are not the same. We will never be the same. And so when you start with that premise, you have to determine which culture is better. But people were afraid to say that because you're accused of supremacy. It's not racial supremacy. It's cultural supremacy. And I'm okay with it. I'm a nationalist and I am a cultural supremacist. Go ahead. I'm fine with it. So the West, though, unfortunately, have people working, the enemy within, working against it because they feel guilty of the West. They don't want the West to be edified. And you just saw this in Germany, and this is why we have to have the deportations and a strong border in the United States. An Afghan in Germany, migrant, who should have assimilated, right? We should have this beautiful mosaic. It doesn't work. Murdered a 2-year-old and his caretaker.
Well, let's bring you some news on another story we're watching. This is out of Germany, where there are reports of a knife attack in a city in Bavaria. This is the city of Aschaffenburg. Police saying 2 people have been killed, among them a toddler. That attack taking place this morning in a park.
Now, I know we don't want to be insensitive, and I know that we don't want to say, hey, maybe people should have seen this coming, though we'll lay out the case. It could be your guess is as good as mine, but the authorities did finally manage to identify the perpetrator. Yeah, seems like...
I wonder which one.
One of these things.
Well.
So let me give you the information here. This murderer, and that's what this person is, was a 28-year-old failed asylum seeker from Afghanistan, was supposed to leave the country last year. All right. So that seems pretty cut and dry. Well, why was this person seeking asylum? What does that mean? And if they weren't supposed to be there, why was this person still there? That's the problem that we run into. So when people tell you that they are compassionate and they want to stop deportations, they want to actively fight against the best interests of the United States or Western civilization, just remember this is how it's done. Hey, what would have been more compassionate is this guy to be out, hopefully punished. But that brings us, for those of you who are still trying to make sense of this, to another installment of Then and Now. All right, so we start this off. Hopefully we're all on the same page. This is a heinous crime, and the focus should be how do we prevent these kinds of evil crimes from ever occurring again.
Makes me want to bring back public execution.
Yeah, exactly, like they do in their culture.
Definitely.
They don't get everything wrong. But some people are more concerned with reducing collateral offense. So let's go to now. This is the headline here on the BBC. References available, link in the description. It says, toddler and man fatally stabbed in German park. Okay. Fine. But here's then. They corrected it. They changed it from this. See if you can spot why. Toddler and man fatally stabbed in German park. Afghan man held. Let me ask you. Oh, wait a sec. We know that this is the person. We know the murderer in question. That information hasn't changed. But the media, who's supposed to provide you with information, removed the description of the assailant. They decided you deserve less information. Ask yourself why.
Jeez. Can you show me that first one again? The one without the Afghan man held on it?
Yeah, that's today.
There you go.
It's like they just took Weidel.
Which means there was a meeting. It means that someone was reprimanded and someone corrected what they viewed as a mistake. Someone in the media viewed it as wrong to tell you who the murderer was.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because it might offend somebody. All right. This now brings us to the government response in Germany. Okay, let's go to now. All right. The Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, liberal, by the way, said, I'm tired of seeing, well, I guess, okay, we're talking about Germany. I'm tired of seeing these acts of violence every few weeks carried out by people who have come to us to find protection here. A false notion of misplaced tolerance is completely inappropriate. Words are not enough. Hey, that sounds pretty firm, but let's go to then, 2 days ago. Scholz was telling the WEF that free speech was allowed in his country so long as it wasn't kind of what he just said. Doesn't sound right-wing?
So on the question of the dealing of Elon Musk, I had a lot of things to comment in the past because he was discussing a lot about Europe. And just to repeat what I already said, we have the freedom of speech in Europe, and in Germany everyone can say what he wants.
No, you don't.
Even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. And that is what I would like to repeat again.
Mm-hmm. Now, what qualifies as extremely right-wing? Any Republican, any conservative in the United States who advocates for Second Amendment absolutism, that is extreme right-wing. Anyone in the United States who believes in the First Amendment and that freedom of speech is absolute as long as you're not committing a crime, regardless of opinion, that is considered extreme right-wing. Yeah. Pointing out statistical crime realities is extreme right-wing.
Apparently putting Afghan man held is extreme right-wing because they had to edit their headline.
Absolutely. Exactly. And keep in mind, in Germany and in UK, all across Europe, this is why the United States is better than Europe, people have been jailed. People have been fined, have been jailed for speaking out on social media. You know, the most extreme example I pointed to you was in the UK, a man who was actually jailed for doing a cover of Kung Fu Fighting at a karaoke bar. Yeah. Someone said it was offensive. Yeah, the little pug who did the Sig Heil. Remember that? Remember? Yeah. In Canada, you've had comedians who've been put before human rights tribunals. If you live in the United States, you enjoy something that nobody else on earth does. Comment below if you recognize that. I know I've been harping on it since 2009, but we are uniquely different in that sense. It's one thing to say freedom of speech. It's another thing to actually practice it. No other country does. So I know what you're saying. Hey, what about Jeffrey Dahmer? What about white murder? Of course, there are murderers across all races of people. Yeah. But the anecdotal doesn't disqualify the empirical. Afghans in Germany are 40 times more likely to commit gang rapes than native-born Germans. And to give you an idea, the kind of fight, this is why we've arrived at this point. Hey, maybe some lives could have been saved. In 2016, Snopes fact-checked me for reporting that Germany was handing out do not rape pamphlets after a whole bunch of New Year's rapes. And just so you know, their fact check was actually these pamphlets were printed first in 2013 in Hamburg. So this is false. These were only redistributed en masse because of a bunch of giant gang rapes.
Right.
In Cologne.
So the problem persists over years?
That's the whole point, yes.
They actually had to print out, there are pictorials.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
Your hand reaching for a woman's butt in a bikini. No.
Think of how silly this is. Think of the first step, how silly it is.
That's what the Afghans said when they saw the pamphlet.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, look at how silly this is. I will do it anyway.
That some white privileged moron, likely a feminist, thinks that some hairy would-be terrorist, fake asylum seeker is going to see a circle with a red line through it and a hand on an ass and go, I never knew.
Sorry, my bad.
She doesn't like it.
Why would she dress like that if she doesn't want it?
And then the media took it upon themselves and it was reported to say, oh no, it's really important that we fact check that this is not the first printing. Hey, if your job is to give people information to keep them safe or to make better, more informed decisions, wouldn't you be more focused on giving them the information to avoid, say, a gang rape? Like decrease it by 40 times as far as likelihood? Let me distill it. Afghan man held. That's removed from the headline, right? BBC. Afghans in Germany 40 times more likely to commit gang rape. You statistically could drastically reduce your chances of being raped by avoiding largely Afghan areas in Germany. That's a fact. Is the media serving you?
Tip.
And this is what we see now. We see the pendulum swinging, and we'll get to the United States because the media is still actively acting against deporting the kinds of people here who could commit those crimes. No, I get it. Not all illegal aliens are committing gang rapes. That's not what I'm saying. But you can't know. Just like they weren't able to deport this man. Do you feel compassionate? So now you have these new polls, and Germany's far right AfD party is now the second most popular party with support of 20%. Schulz party, the liberal, is third with 17%. And the AfD's leader, Alice Weidel, recently supported the idea of remigration. So let me explain to you what that means. That's more severe than just deporting people who are criminals, illegal aliens. That's removing immigrants who refuse to integrate. In other words, people who have maybe even been there legally for a while, it's, but you can't stay here. Why? On account of the fact that you keep grabbing German women's asses. Now, that may seem extreme to you, but what do you think happens when you have rapists, when you have murderers who can't be deported? People become more right-wing. I know I am. Do you guys feel that? Is it just me? Do you feel yourself being pushed more to the right? I genuinely am. If people say to change your mind, you could look at my opinions. Again, long timeline back in 2009 on YouTube with a blue bed sheet. Largely pretty similar, but I'm more hardline. I have less tolerance at this point. I think I'm just exhausted with it. Now, according to the Western mainstream media, if you don't want migrant rape, well, that makes you a Nazi. And the AfD is the party of Nazis, right?
Really?
Because they're extreme right wing. Here's the problem, though. Here's what the AfD's leader, who I just mentioned, said about the Jews. I know what you're thinking. Oh, but kill them, right? Nazi. That's typically par for the course with a Nazi. They're kind of big on killing Jews.
Eradicate all that.
Exactly. It's almost like their raison d'être. Instead, this far right-wing extremist said this early this month.
We need to protect not only the existence of the state of Israel. I also think that Benjamin Netanyahu have made many mistakes in the past, to be honest. But we also need to take our responsibility as a German nation state to protect Jewish life, Jewish people in our country who are exposed right now to Muslim crime.
She's a really bad Nazi.
Yeah.
She did. And she stuck the landing on Muslim crime. By the way, not only protecting the Jews, but that's the leader of that party that's supposed to be Nazis. She's a lesbian married to a Sri Lankan who speaks Mandarin. So those are all not Nazi things. Like she's one of the worst Nazis in history, I think.
Someone confiscate her Iron Cross.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. People are idiots. Like, are you serious?
Just the point is, who cares anymore? All right, okay, I'm fine with it. I think that we should stop Muslim migrants from raping people, and I think we should stop them from attacking Jews, which statistically is a real problem. Oh, that makes me a Nazi? Okay, fine. And by the way, this isn't just in Germany. This brings us to the United States, and the reason that these deportations are happening, and they're happening quickly, and they're happening in a way that is, frankly, righteous. It needs to happen because we need to protect innocent people in this country. And we have more examples of this here. So just yesterday, in Michigan, refugee worker was stabbed again by an Afghan he was helping to resettle.
A terrifying ordeal for a caseworker who helps refugees from Afghanistan get resettled into Michigan. Investigators in Oakland County say he was attacked in his own home in Orion Township Wednesday.
Well, it's terrible. I mean, obviously the person is trying to do their job, which is to help that person assimilate, and for whatever reason, this is the reaction he got.
Sheriff Mike Bouchard says a refugee helped by the caseworker somehow tracked down the caseworker's home address on Red Root Road, showed up, and stabbed them repeatedly, putting the victim in the hospital in critical condition.
That man was way too nonchalant about that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, he was trying to help him. He got stabbed. That's not the kind of behavior that we typically expect from Michiganders. I got stabbed one time in the clink. I was there for gang rape. I was young and carefree, right? We all make mistakes. No, like, this is not normal. It's not something to be addressed as normal. Let's not normalize
Be
it.
outraged by it.
Yeah.
Let's stigmatize it. Let's bring stigmatization back. Let me give you some other examples, because it's not just Muslim migrants. Remember the woman who was set on fire? New York City subway by a Guatemalan illegal. Of course, Lake and Riley, that act is likely, I believe, going to be finalized today, if I'm not
I think
mistaken.
he's
Was
supposed to sign it.
murdered by a Venezuelan illegal. You had Jocelyn Nungri, right, murdered by Venezuelan illegals. You had Kate Steinle, who was murdered by Mexican illegal alien. And by the way, I believe the jury acquitted the person of murder. California jury, right? You had Rachel Morin, we covered that, murdered by an El Salvadorian illegal. So my point is, we do have a statistical problem with Islamic migrants because they come from a culture that doesn't share our values.
A culture of violence.
It is a culture of violence.
Yeah.
It's a culture of power, and it's a culture of violence.
And our culture right now and cultures around the world have gotten this wrong for forever, right? But specifically in the last 30 years, in the United States, the last 10, 15 years, it's not compassionate. This is false compassion.
Right.
To say, oh, yeah, just send us whoever you want. They're like, well, of course, Jesus would say, open it up and let everybody come in. Yeah, there are rules to that, though. There's order to that. God is a God of order. Do you think that Jesus would have invited in all of the Satan worshipers into the temple and said, continue to be Satan worshipers. Continue to do exactly what you've done that is completely against. Why do you think he gave the Jews such a distinct culture compared to all the people around him? That's what made a lot of the people hate him. They're a little quirky, right?
Yeah.
That is not
Jesus made them funny?
A little God.
Yes.
So that is not a compassionate stance. And so Christians here and liberals, everybody else, telling somebody a lie is not compassionate. No. Saying, just come here, do everything the way that you've always done it, is not compassionate. The truth in love is, come here from a culture that you hated, that produced nothing for you economically, that gave you no future and your kids no future. Come to the place that can give you a future and start to become it. Right. Don't just come and be what you were there and try to make little India, little Mexico, little anything else. Become American, because that is what brought you here in the first place. That's compassionate.
Yeah. What's compassionate is truth. Let's be honest.
Yes.
What's compassionate is truth. Hey, is child sacrifice compassionate? No? Then tolerance for it is not compassionate. Hey, is having a child bride compassionate, or is it wrong? Then tolerating a culture that supports child brides is not compassionate. What about theft? This is one thing that people have always tried to use on Christians. Like, well, if I need a flying spaghetti monster to tell me not to steal or not to kill, then I just must be a horrible person. Okay, well, first off, that's silly, because murder is fine in some countries if it's just done the right way, and so is theft. But what about bigamy? What about getting rid of your AIDS by raping a young girl or a virgin? What about child brides? You need to have some kind of a foundation, and tolerating societies and cultures who don't share the values of modern Christendom. For example, mercy is one of those modern values. That's a very new thing. It's not compassionate. As a matter of fact, I would argue that it's actively harmful, because that guy was in Germany. He shouldn't have been there, and he killed a toddler. You think this is one of those, I don't know, he was a straight A student? No. You saw the signs. He wasn't supposed to be there anyway, but there was no mechanism to get rid of them. Why? Because of the propaganda from the left. Because the left actively seeks to undercut any exercising of our constitutional authority. What can you expect as these deportations start here in the United States? Huge, just mass amounts of propaganda. You'll hear about Border Patrol agents using whips, kids in cages. You'll have crying migrants at the border.
Yes.
You'll have people on social media saying, but we need H-1Bs because we don't have enough skilled, intelligent Americans. We need to bring in the best, but we also need illegal aliens to do all of our manual labor jobs because Americans won't do those. What they're trying to tell you is you need other people to replace, I know we're not allowed to use that word, but I'm going to anyway, American workers and American citizens with people from cultures that engage in many times evil. And here's the thing. You don't have to understand every culture. You don't. You don't have to know which cultures practice sacrifice, which cultures practice cannibalism, which cultures don't have an age of consent. You just need to understand that, well, we have a culture, and people can only walk through the door if they subscribe to it, if they embrace it. If they don't, they're not welcome. Hey, if you're still watching, this is the part where I increase interactions and tell you to comment below. What do you think? Right, because that works. But if you don't, you can just click one of these videos playing in a similar vein, or it may autoplay. Ooh, that's fun.